I hope you're well. It's the 29th of January. I can't believe it's almost the end of January and I'm just on my way to work. It's a Monday and it's just a guy riding a very small bike. Anyway, today I thought I would share what I actually do when I'm doing self-coaching scholars, because I know that every day I'm like, oh, and I did self-coaching scholars this morning and I haven't actually shared what I do. And one of you guys commented and said, like, I'd love to know what you actually do to sort of do that thought work and personal development stuff. So basically what I do, the main thing that I consistently do every day as part of self-coaching scholars is what Brooke calls a thought download, and then doing 2 models on the thought download. So that might sound like jargon if you don't know anything about her work. So Brooke Castillo created the program. She is a life coach and an amazing businesswoman, and I had followed her podcast, The Life Coach School, religiously ever since the day I discovered it. And in September last year I signed up for her program, and I wish I'd done it sooner, but anyway, that's fine. And so she has what she calls the model, which is an idea that it, like she will say, isn't her own idea, but it's just a way of wait, I don't know how to describe this. So her, like, the thing that underpins all of her work is that our thoughts create our feelings create our actions, and our actions create our results. So when you do the model, you basically write down, so it's CTFAR. So there's a line for the circumstance, the thought, the feeling, the action, and the result. And I'll link below a podcast episode where she describes it, because I don't think I'm describing it well at all. But it's basically a way to see, like, well, if I'm having this thought, what feeling will that create? What action will that create? And what result will that create? And the result always has to be about you. It can't be that another person will do something or another person will feel something. You can only control your own results. So it always has to be a result for yourself. So yeah, you can either plug in a thought and then be like, okay, well, what feeling is that thought creating? What action will that create? And what result? Or you can start with the action line and you can be like, well, what am I doing? Procrastinating, for example, action. And then the feeling, maybe you feel overwhelmed, and the thought is there's not enough time for everything. So, or you can start at the result. So say you want a certain result in your life, like to go to the gym 6 times a week. You can write that in the result line to have done 6 workouts. Then the action you need to take, the feeling you need to feel to take that action, and then the thought you need to have, and then you get to work at creating that thought. And Brooke doesn't teach that you have control over the thousands and thousands and thousands of thoughts you have. And when I've told other people about her model, they're like, well, you can't control every thought you have. Like, that's not what this is about, but it's about directing, like you can use your prefrontal cortex to direct your mind. So to use that, and you still have all those thoughts in, but you can at least catch a few of them. And often we don't even see them, but once you see them, you're like, oh, there it is again. So it's really about creating self-awareness, and then really seeing that your circumstance doesn't need to change to feel better. And I think that's one of the hardest things to really wrap your mind, or I found that the hardest thing to wrap my mind around. I feel like I'm definitely there intellectually, that I know that, but it's still really hard in practice. Like, often I think, well, if that person just stopped doing that, then I'd feel better, or if I just had this certain result, then I'd feel better. And it's always because I'm having a certain thought. So if you think about, well, what thought would I have if that person changed what I wanted them to change, or whatever, and then realizing that I can literally have that thought now, and I can direct my mind, and that trying to control people and have them change what they're doing so I can feel better is not going to work. And I've tried it, it doesn't work. And even if it does work, it's just not pleasant for either person. And so then I won't go into all the things that, like, all the questions that come up around it, like, oh, aren't you just deluding yourself, and aren't you just going to settle for things that you shouldn't accept, and all of that. So I will put you over to Brooke's podcast, because I could chat on for hours. And yeah, but what I do is a thought download. So when I first started self-coaching scholars, I used to only write maybe like 10 sentences, but now I make myself write down a whole page. And this isn't like a journal entry. So if you have a journal entry, you're kind of like speaking as if you're telling it to someone, explaining something to someone. When you're doing a thought download, you're like just writing down your thoughts. So not writing down your, like, the way you've connected your thoughts and what you're making them all mean, just your thoughts, like, there's not enough time, I'm never going to be able to do this, what am I thinking, like that. Not, I feel like there's not enough time, I'm not, like, do you know what I mean? The distinction is, it's not writing down like a journal entry and being really descriptive. You're literally just writing down your thoughts as they are in your mind, and it takes quite a bit of practice, but I found that by making myself write down an entire page, and really just writing my thoughts, and if I don't know what I'm thinking, then I write down, like, what am I thinking, and then I kind of just, or I pick an area. So I'm like, I write down, like, what am I thinking about my business, or what am I thinking about exercise, or whatever I want to do, and then that kind of brings up the thoughts. Or I can pick a specific situation, because I found that when I try to do a thought download, oh shit, I didn't bring an umbrella, and it's looking like it's gonna rain, and I have a bit of a long walk up to work, but anyway, so I found that when I first started doing them, it's also called, like, probably what other people call stream of consciousness writing, but I found when I first did it, I'd be like completely blank, like I'm not thinking anything, when obviously you're always thinking something. But I just found it really challenging. So now I write down, what am I thinking, and then I kind of start, or what am I thinking about my business or my goal, or if I'm struggling with something, I often do my thought download about that. So the last few days when I haven't been following my plan, I'm like, what am I thinking about planning and all of that, and I'm back on plan, which is so good. So so I do a thought download, and then I do 2 models. So what I do, and this is what Brooke recommends, is doing what she calls an unintentional model and an intentional model. So what you do is you pull out a thought from the ones you've written down that you're like unintentionally having. So maybe it's like, there's not enough time to get everything done. And so then I write down, like, and I'm using this as an example because this is one I often have. There's not enough time to get everything done, and then the feeling is stressed, and then the action is procrastinate, and then the result is that there's not enough time to get everything done. And she often talks about how the thought, like, creates the thought confirms the results, the result confirms the thought. Anyway, so then I have that one, and I'm like, well, I don't really want that in my life. So then the intentional model is, and sometimes, like, you might think to write down like there's plenty of time to get everything done, but you need to try and come up with a thought that you can believe, and then you practice believing that. So sometimes if you really have this ingrained belief that there's not enough time to get everything done and your brain just keeps going back there, what you can do is write down like a bridge thought, which is basically like, I'm considering that there might be enough time to get everything done. Because if you say there's plenty of time to get everything done, your brain will probably, no there's not, and it just kind of confirms that negative belief even more and reinforces it. But if you say, I'm considering there's enough time to get everything done, it's not like jumping like to positive thinking, it's just like that next step. So if you're considering it, and then once you believe that, then you can probably believe that there is enough time. So it's doing that, and that practice really just helps bring awareness to the thoughts that you're having and the thoughts that you want to be having. And then the practice really is to direct your mind when you have that, when you find yourself having the thoughts about not having enough time, to like intentionally say to yourself, I'm considering that there's enough time to get everything done. And I think I've described the whole process quite poorly, but it's really just learning how to coach yourself. Oh, it's raining. Learning how to coach yourself and just bring a lot of awareness to the thoughts that I'm having, and to like, it's just been immensely helpful and has really just like, I find that when I write down the a thought download, especially say if I'm feeling overwhelmed, and this is a good one if you've been feeling overwhelmed or stressed, you write down all the thoughts you've been having relating to whatever it is you're stressed about. And when you write it all down, you're like, no wonder I feel crazy stressed, like look at all these thoughts. And then you can come up with new thoughts, and they might need to be bridge thoughts, like I'm considering there's enough time to get everything done, etc. Or just like a more neutral thought. Her example that she often uses for doing that is, if you have the current thought, I'm fat, oh no, I hate my body, then if you are trying to believe I love my body, it's too much of a jump, and your brain will just be like, no I don't, like no, I can't believe that. So she teaches her clients to go from I hate my body to I have a body, because you can believe like I have a body, and then once you're in that more neutral place, then to I love my body, or whatever you want to believe. So that's really the practice that I'm doing. And then I write down 3 like affirmations, and they're probably like, I feel even silly saying this, but I'll explain where they've come from. So I think I've probably done a video at this point on the whole affirmations thing, and how you'd really just focus in your brain, or like telling your brain what to focus on. And my favorite way to create new thoughts is to write them down repetitively. So I'll link below the videos where I talk about that in more detail if you want to know what that is. But I write down 3 things. So one is I will make $500,000 in my business in 2018, which is my impossible goal for the year. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll link some videos below where I talk about that. And that was part of Self-Coaching Scholars, to create an impossible goal. And then not necessarily, like the goal isn't to achieve the goal, though of course that's amazing if you do, but to become the kind of person who's willing to fail repeatedly in order to show up for themselves, and to, I don't even know how to describe it, but to just become the kind of person that shows up and is really willing to go for it. So that's my impossible goal. The second one I write down is I'm unstoppable in the face of failure, and I write each of these down 15 times. And I actually put on, I feel so dirty saying this, whatever, I put on a song on Spotify. I'll link it below. I tried to find like something that's kind of like inspirational with no words or anything, and mainly because when Tony Robbins talks about this stuff, he talks about like getting into a state. So I wanted to have like a song, and it's not the best song in the world. but I just couldn't find anything better. So I put this song on while I'm writing it down, and it just kind of creates that like inspiring feeling. So the second one I write down is I'm unstoppable in the face of failure. The reason I write that is because part of my impossible goal is being willing to fail repeatedly and to keep going. And Brooke had said that the mantra for the year is basically I'm willing to fail repeatedly for my impossible goal. So I had been writing that down, and most days I'm like, it doesn't feel like it means anything. But on the days when I'm like putting myself out there and I'm writing it down, I'm like, yes, I am willing to fail repeatedly. And whether it's due to that affirmation or not, but I definitely feel my fear of failure is so much less, like so much less. Like I'm really willing to do things that could fail. And I don't know if it's that or not, but whatever. So then I went to the Landmark Forum. My brother did it. I recommended he do it, and he did it last weekend, and you go to the Sunday night, and the lady that was running it said the phrase I'm unstoppable in the face of failure, like just a throwaway, like in the middle of a story. And I was like, oh my god, I love the way she said that. So that's what I've been writing now. And the third one, and this sounds like, I don't know, so I was listening to a motivational video. I'll link it. It's like my favorite one. And in it, the guy is just like doing this speech about how if you believed you were the best actor in the world, you would act differently. And he's like, you'd act differently and hold yourself differently and conduct yourself differently. I've listened to it so many times I don't know if I had. Then if you were like, I hope I'm good. So I write down I'm one of the best bloggers in the world 15 times. Because when I was listening to that, and I used to listen to that when I was writing my affirmations, I was like, what? Like, I want to have that belief, and if I have that belief, then I will do things differently than if I'm like, I hope I'm good. So I write that down as well. So that probably takes me about 15 minutes to write down those three, and it feels a bit tedious most days, but just from having the affirmation work before with quitting my full-time job and just seeing the power of it, like I know they're already working in the sense that I'm really starting to think about things differently. And it's hard to just say it's just those, but it's not hurting anything. So that's what I do when I say I did self-coaching scholars this morning. So I hope that has made some sense. I will link below the podcast episodes of Brooke's that I think would be most helpful if you're interested. Like, she shares all of her most amazing stuff for free, and Self-Coaching Scholars really is just like how to apply it and getting coaching from Brooke and watching her coach people, which I love. I'm so nerdy with coaching stuff. I love just watching her coach and seeing other people get coached. I also have a lot of realizations about my own life just from hearing them talk about theirs, because everyone really has sort of like the same sorts of experiences, like, if that makes sense, like not the same experiences, but I feel like there's only like 10 different situations really. So anyway, I'm gonna leave it here. It's raining really hard, which I am glad, because our tank water is really low, but I hope it's not raining at the hospital so that I can walk up to work. But anyway, I hope this has been helpful if you're wanting to do it. I definitely recommend, like, you don't need to be doing her course to do it, and it's taken me like 4 months to warm up to that process and really get into it. And so don't expect it to be easy. It's not easy, but it works, and it really helps bring that self-awareness. And then I do meditation for 10 minutes with Headspace, which I had gotten out of the habit of doing. Not out of the habit, but I hadn't done it for maybe like 5 days because I was like, I don't have enough time. So this morning I was like, what am I talking about? Of course I have enough time for meditation. And I did it, and I had enough time, and it was great. And then I was so focused when I was working, not because of the meditation necessarily, but because I'm like, I'm gonna actually follow my plan. Like, this week I'm being really faithful to my plan. I'm being my own employee, not not negotiating with myself about what I'm doing. I decided that on Sunday, and I'm going to do it. So, yeah. So I hope you're well. I'll talk to you tomorrow.